Hello and welcome to episode 4. I can't believe we're recording the 4th episode already. Seems like we just started this yesterday. And some great news for the last episode, we had a record-breaking viewership. I mean, we've never seen viewership like this before. 71 views, guys. Keep it going, keep it going. When we started, who knew that 71 people would actually watch us? But there are 70 geeks out there that believe in what we're doing. So thank you, Vaibhav. Let's continue on with the show for today.
Sure.
So let's start with the equipment we're using. So we've been changing equipment every single week, that we've been broadcasting. Let's start with yours today. What do you have today?
So I've got the OnePlus 70 Pro front-facing cam.
70 Pro from last year.
Yeah, from last year with the pop-up front-facing cam. And I think it's doing a pretty good job. I mean, you said earlier it looks really good.
From what I can tell, it looks really good. I mean, it looks as good as an SLR. I'd say an SLR quality performance on there. The only thing is that, like we were talking about earlier, is that once we record this, which we're recording on Zoom, the compression levels of Zoom are massive in the sense that an hour's episode is just 300 megabytes in size at the end of the day. So I don't know how this is going to translate from that perspective. We'll find out today because I'm actually using a proper camera this time around. I've got the Sony RX100 Mark V with me, and that is connected through HDMI to my MacBook Pro, acting as a webcam, which is what you're kind of seeing right now. For my audio, I just have my AirPods back today. Last time I had the Samsung Galaxy Buds, and I noticed my audio levels were a bit lower. So hopefully the AirPod solution works. I've got something else as well in case this doesn't work next week. We can try that out as well. But let's see how the quality is for this particular one. For the headphones, what are you using for sound?
I'm just using JBL, I think JBL E65 headphones. So normal and has a mic and noise cancellation. So pretty regular stuff. It's the same that I used last week as well. I thought the audio was pretty okay, especially how it isolates the background. So I thought I'd keep it going.
For sure. So, I mean, I was at the office a couple of days back, and I noticed one of Reen, she works on our team, and I stole her headset. She's not in the office, so she won't find out anyways, and I don't think she watches this show. She's not a geek. So this one's the HyperX, I think, and it's got one of those mic that folds down.
Yes. Is that a gaming one?
That's a gaming one, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So maybe next week I'll try and use that and see, if there's any performance difference and the audio quality is better or not.
People also tend to use these are the editing headphones that I use, and people stick a mic on the side of the headphones. It's basically called a mod mic.
Right.
And that connects to your laptop via USB, and it gives you pretty good audio. I've seen many people actually record YouTube videos with that. So
that's quite interesting. So my other colleague, Mufi, had another headset sitting on his desk as well. I was just scouting for headsets at the office. Sorry, Mufi. Mufi probably watches this show. And he had an Asus TUF, some kind of whatever gaming headset, which had a USB connector on it, and a separate mic thing that plugs into the headset or into the headphones. So maybe that's what you're talking about. In fact, he had 2 or 3 very interesting looking headsets on his desk. Mufi, don't be surprised if they're gone the next week or by the
But I think the one that I'm saying is just literally the mic, which you can stick onto the headphone, and you can move it around like a regular mic.
Oh, so it's not part of a headset?
No. So you can make it part of any headset you want.
Oh, wow. Okay, that is interesting. That is
and it basically connects via USB, just like a typical USB mic. And it gives you pretty good audio quality as well. So maybe that could be on the cards if the audio isn't good enough. Which I think the audio is pretty good. But if we want to sort of take it to the next level, then maybe that might be the move.
For sure. And I'm still waiting on my buddy AK to give us the Logitech recaps. He's promised me that for 1 week. AK, I'm talking to you seriously. Come on, man. It's been 1 month now. We've recorded 4 episodes and we do 2 weeks. 2 months. Sorry, my math is a little off today. So come on, get us those webcams with this amazing 4K quality and the stereo mics, etc., that you've been promising for the last month.
Is the stereo mic built into the webcam?
So I think it is, on the Logitech that we're supposed to be getting. Yes, I think it is. He's told me that you're going to be blown away. Now, the thing is that every week we keep upping our game, right? So, I mean, we started with the crappy mobile phones. At that time, it might have blown us away. But, we kept going and going and going. And last week, I did it on the S20, which has a 30 megapixel front camera. And today
40.
I'm on a actual camera, 40 megapixel camera. And today I'm actually on a proper camera. And then next week, maybe I'll do the Canon on there. So
next week you might do the red camera.
I've actually got the Panasonic GH5, is it? Just sitting over here. It's a pretty good camera and it records 4K as well. So who knows? It actually has a proper full-size HDMI port on it. So that's the one I actually thought about using today, but I was like, no, let's start with the smaller one. The RX 100 is super portable, very easily to set up, And even with this RX 100, it is actually sitting a good 4 to 5 feet away from me. So, I mean, normally with our phone cams and stuff, they're pretty much right up here, but this is a good 4 to 5 feet away. And that has allowed me to sort of get into this framing. If it was any closer, So I think these regular cameras do need a little bit of space for better.
For sure.
Cool. Okay, so let's start and get on with the show. First topic of the day, the iPhone rumors. Bosser, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly. Apparently, celebrity in the Apple world, a new celebrity. I know the old guys, Rene Ritchie and John Luke and stuff like that. Yes, but this is new, someone new, and he's been spot on for the last few weeks. I think with the iPhone SE and a couple of other ones before that, he's nailed it. So he is suggesting that the iPhone 12, he's got a lot of information on his YouTube video that he posted. Did you get a chance to see the video?
Nope. I just follow him through his tweets.
Okay, literally, so I went through that video, tons and tons of information. Now, the one thing I want to set straight is we nailed the naming convention last time around when we spoke about it. So according to him, it is going to be the iPhone 12, iPhone 12 Max, iPhone 12 Pro, and iPhone 12 Pro Max. Guys, we said this 2 weeks, 4 weeks earlier. I don't know, just go up to one of our older episodes. We nailed the naming convention. So yay, we actually nailed on that. But 4 different phones, 4 different screen sizes. Obviously, pricing levels for each one of them is different as well. Would be helpful if I turn my mobile phone off silent. Let's do that. So yeah, a lot of detail on that. He is suggesting, let me pull up the show notes over here where I kind of put all of that on.
I have them here. So
okay, excellent. So yeah, do you want to read it out and then we can talk about
that? So you've said it's a 5.4 inch to a 6.1 inch configuration for the 12 and 12 Max.
Correct. Exactly.
And OLED. So not ProMotion OLED. So that's going to be the difference. And 4 gigabytes of RAM. Okay. And it's going to start at $649. So
correct.
Is the pricing nailed on? Because that means it's going to be $50 less than what the 11 started at.
Right. So the 11 is the 6.1 inch, which starts at $749. So now they've got 2 phones. The 11 is split into 12 and 12 Max. I'm actually very interested in the 5.4 inch screen because I think that's going to be a tiny phone and I would love to play with that. And considering it's going to be the edge-to-edge design that, of the modern iPhone 10, not the iPhone SE that we saw, which had 4.7 inch screen, but with tons of bezels. So I'm quite interested in seeing this 5.4 inch phone. I think it's going to be very cute. Would be interesting to see if Apple releases it in different colors as well. And if it's an OLED screen with Face ID, everything else that comes along with the iPhone 11, this is the phone that I'm super interested in. And the $649 price tag, I guess they priced the iPhone SE at $400, so it needed to be higher than that. So I think $50 less than the outgoing iPhone 11 for the smaller version, and then $50 more for the same size version makes sense. If you remember correctly, the iPhone 10R was priced at $749 as well, so they reduced the pricing of the iPhone 11, so they're going back to that, but introducing a smaller version with a lesser price tag. So I think quite cool. I like those specs. I think that's quite good. And apparently 5G on all of them as well. On the 12 as well as the 12 Pro. The only difference is that the 12 Pro will support millimeter wave versus this one supports a sub. So I mean, this is I guess the older version of 5G versus the newer version of 5G. Not that anybody has 5G at all at the moment. So I don't know why we have an older and a newer version of it already. But if that's what makes you happy, then yeah, it will have 5G support on there. So that's the iPhone 12.
That's surprising. The 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max, 6.1 and 6.7 inch ProMotion OLED. Okay. So do you think it's going to have 120?
So ProMotion is Apple's terminology for higher refresh rates, which is found on the iPad Pro, is ProMotion. So I'm assuming, yes, that it will. It was quite interesting what he was saying, that they will be hardware capable of it, but whether or not Apple actually implements them in the software will purely come down to battery life. So
Right.
if they're sucking too much battery life out of the phone, then there's a good chance that they'll just, his words were, nerf it, from the software, even though the hardware is going to be capable of it. But if they can get a guaranteed amount of battery life, then they will leave it on there.
I think they're going to be a bit apprehensive considering like the 11 Pro series of phones delivered like amazing battery life, and people were like really impressed by it. So let's say they go for that 120 hertz and it sort of demolishes battery life. They don't want that impression to come back. So maybe they have the hardware and they sort of nerf it in the software, because I've seen I think many manufacturers do that. So there was a recent phone, I think it's the Mizu 17. It was announced in China, and this is just off topic, but they have a hardware that's capable of 120 hertz, but the software limited it to 90 hertz. But now there's an update for it that's going to raise it to 120 hertz. So I think we're going to see Apple do something similar, or maybe they might give consumers choice, which is something that they don't give otherwise.
Give choice, Apple? Seriously? Good one. Very good one. Very nice. No, they're not going to give us choice. It's either going to be on or off. But I think what they might go with is variable refresh rates, where the OS will automatically tone it down to 60 when it's not being used. I think Google did that, if I remember correctly, on the Pixel. So they might go down that route where you might have a smaller or lower refresh rates on regular stuff, where you're not scrolling around or just looking at a static screen, and then once you're scrolling past a particular speed, that 120 hertz kicks in.
It kicks in.
Apple's got absolutely. Apple's got that advantage of owning the software and the hardware, so it makes it easier for them to do something like this. But yeah, that's exciting. That's definitely exciting. What else?
Something that also interests me is the price. So the max price of the iPhone 12 Pro Max is going to be $1,199. So that's $200 less than the S20 Ultra. So
that's the starting price, right? Correct.
That's very interesting, considering the Ultra didn't really do well to justify its price tag when it came out. And if Apple can offer something better than it for $200 cheaper, they're going to go all out against like Android. And because Samsung is sort of the forefront of Android, I guess that's the way for them to destroy Android.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who'd have thought, right? I mean, who'd have thought that we'd see a year where the OnePlus would have $1,000 phone and the Apple would have like a $400 phone? Who'd have thought? But you're absolutely right. That could be true. Also interesting is that the screen size is being increased on both compared to the iPhone 11 Pro model. So 6.1 inches on the smaller size and 6.7 inches on the larger size. Now, I'm assuming it's going to be a combination of slight bezel reduction, slight notch reduction, as well as a slight overall increase in the size of the phone as well. It's probably going to be all three things that come into play to reach those higher, those higher.
Do you think all four phones will have the same design, so like the blocky iPhone 5S look, or do you think the normal variants might not have it?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I would think that they might reserve the new design for the Pro. Obviously, newer designs costs more as well. It's easier to manufacture on a process that you already have in place. So there is a chance that the iPhone 12, the regular one, might not get those flatter edges, but the Pro version might. Yeah, that's a very good question. And obviously, you're going to have 3 cameras and a LiDAR on the Pro. I'm guessing the regular one will have 2 cameras. Pretty much like what we've seen on the iPhone 11.
Yeah. A14 Bionic, iOS 14. That's pretty standard stuff. So yeah, aside from that, there's nothing else. I mean, I want to see what iOS 14 brings to revamp the experience in a sense, because like looking at iOS from like an outsider perspective, it's been the same since iOS 8 was it when we refreshed it? I think 8 or 7. So maybe slight changes that have a meaningful touch. I'd like to see something done to iOS 14, and maybe we might find that out in June.
No, for sure. For WWDC, we will know what holds in store for the new iOS. But what's interesting is that you mentioned that iOS went through a major redesign. Was it iOS 7 or 8, where it was like completely
Sometime
flattened
then.
out, et cetera, et cetera. And it's interesting because they have sort of gone back on so many things that were introduced in that and sort of brought it more to normal, because it was, quite frankly speaking, a radical change, even though it doesn't look like it. I mean, the fonts, specifically the typography and stuff like that, was harder to read, even though it was, I don't know, it was a very flat, very clean look that they were trying to go for. But then they've kind of backtracked over a few years, polished it, and figured out where things didn't necessarily need to change from a design just because they wanted to change it from a design perspective. So they've rolled back on quite a few of that. And I think I like iOS. I think it's in a nice state right now. But having said that, yes, it would be nice to see something new, something refreshing.
Does iOS have a dark mode? Does iOS have a dark mode? Okay.
So iOS actually introduced dark mode before Android. We had dark mode across iOS before Android did. And the one thing that really ticks me about iOS is that, when you move icons to a new screen, they start from the top left. They should start from the bottom left. I always think that icons should start and then build up. It feels weird just to have an icon on the top left side of the screen hanging by itself. Just feels very, very weird. So
what about the notification system? Because that's something that people complain about a lot, the notification system of like them popping up.
So they used to complain about it, but I think in iOS 12, was it, if I remember correctly?
They stack it, right?
12. Yeah, absolutely. So 12 was the one that kind of changed that, where they're stacked. You can now reply within notifications and stuff like that. So this was taken from Android. Android had this before, and they took a page out of Android's notification chains, which was always superior to iOS, and implemented it in iOS. So it's a lot more manageable now versus what it was maybe 3 iterations ago. It's fine. I have no complaints with the notification system anymore. It works fine. I mean, it doesn't overload you with notifications, and you can reply to notifications or reply to messages or whatever else it is from the notification itself. So I think from that perspective, it's fine. I think Android is still a bit more polished from a notifications perspective, but no complaints on iOS from that. Having said that, I would like to see a mixture of widgets and icons like Android does at the moment on every screen. iOS doesn't allow you to do that. They've just got one shelf on the left side of your springboard, which has all your widgets listed on it. So I would like to see them implement that on iOS 14. It would be a nice change for sure. But yeah, WWDC is when we'll find out.
It'll be fun because I'll be able to attend it for the first time, like everyone.
Me too. I've never been to WWDC, so hey, all of us will be in the same boat for the first time ever, which is cool.
Front seat.
Yep. All right, excellent. Right. So what's the next topic you have on the list?
So we've got a Xiaomi Redmi K30 5G Racing Edition phone. And
that's the name of just one phone?
Yeah, that's the name of one phone.
It's just one phone. You're not describing 4 different products over here.
No. It's one phone. It's one phone. And the funny thing is that phone, is probably exactly going to be the Poco phone F2 Pro. That's supposedly going to be announced like in a few hours from now. So we're recording this when we don't know yet. But what Poco is doing is basically rebranding the Redmi K30 series and having international variants as well as variants in India for the same phone. So that's how they're using the same design and bringing the Poco brand, which was, one of the best budget phones back in the day. I think 2016 was it, when it had flagship specifications. So that's what they're doing. Now, the processor that I'm mentioning is the Snapdragon 768G.
The new one.
Yes. So
the
new one
just announced a day back. Yeah.
Yeah. So that new one is apparently going to give you performance improvements over the 765G. I think around a 15% improvement in performance.
Yeah, that's what I read too.
Yeah. So this to me seems like what Apple's done with the A12Z chip. So they've just added one more. So I think they've just added one more core to the A12. So I think this is a similar sort of increment. I don't think it brings that much more to the table. Like, it's a beefed up variant of the latter and retains global 5G connectivity, both mmWave and sub 6 GHz band. So I think there's nothing different apart from that boost in speed. And that's how they've made a racing edition phone out of it. Pretty simple.
Do you think there was a need for this? I mean, just
No, I don't think there's a need for all of these rebranded phones, and that's actually one of the topics that I've put up to discuss. But let's just bring it in here because it's relevant.
Let's do it.
So Redmi is owned by Xiaomi, and Xiaomi also owns Poco. And in 2020, basically all the phones flagships that they've released are exactly the same. It's literally the same phone with a different name.
Across the three brands.
Across the three brands. So we have the Redmi K30 series, we have the Poco F2 series, and we have the
Xiaomi.
No, it's the Redmi and the Poco, and owned by Xiaomi.
Right.
At the same time, there's another.
Is Redmi a sub-brand of Xiaomi, kind of like how Realme is a sub-brand of Oppo?
Yes.
Okay.
But things get even more confusing because Realme now has a new product called the Narzo 10 and the Narzo 10A. And the Narzo 10 is basically the Realme 6i.
Exactly. I'm getting too old for this.
It's so confusing. Like, I was talking to one of my friends yesterday and he doesn't care about technology, but he's just like, why are there so many phones that are exactly the same? And I think
I'm hearing you say words, but they're not registering. They're just not registering. And if I feel that way, I can understand what a layman feels like.
I found out about the Narzo 10 and the Narzo 10A. I think Realme's sub-brand is Narzo, and it's basically focused on the Indian market. But the phone is the Realme 6i.
So Oppo's sub-brand is Realme, and Realme's sub-brand is whatever it is that you just said is. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's so crazy because they're just recycling the same phones for different regions, pricing them a bit different, and making them region specific, like cheaper prices, but it's exactly the same specifications with a different name. So if a region has the Realme 6i and the Narzo 10, for example, who's gonna buy what?
Why do they do this? I mean, what's the point of doing this? They're just confusing people, right?
I don't know. And I think this is sort of the trend in 2020 because this is just Realme and Poco. I've seen many smartphones being copied like this. Like, for example, let's take into consideration some Chinese phones. A Chinese phone, the K30, is based in China. It's not going to come to international markets at all. It's China specific.
Sure.
They've made an international variant of it, but they've also made an Indian variant of the same phone in the Poco. So I think what these manufacturers want to do is focus on certain specific markets by bringing in brand names that are more recognizable in those specific markets. But it just makes everything a lot more confusing.
I mean, from what I can tell, these are new brands, right? It's not like they're leveraging their current brand. They're just introducing a new brand of the product, just a new brand, same product. It doesn't make sense to me.
It's just a very confusing thing. I mean, look, Honor and Huawei did it as well. So the Huawei P40 Pro is the Honor 30 and the 30 Pro, exactly the same design. And I think it boils down to the fact that, as you said, everything is a lot cheaper to produce when it's produced in mass. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of these phones are literally produced in the same factory, just with different stamps of branding. And there you go. That's a different brand.
This kind of reminds me of the mattress stores in the US, where every corner will have 4 different mattress stores and they're all owned by the same company at the end of the day.
Yeah,
4 different stores with 4 different names, 4 different model numbers of mattresses. But at the end of the day, it's the same company operating all 4 of them.
It's becoming the exact same. And I think 2020 was the year we've started to see so much of it. Because I don't remember in 2019 where we had so many duplicates of the same phone, but 2020 just seems to be that crazy year with everything, tech, life, everything.
No, absolutely. And it's not just really, not restricted to phones. Last night, I attended an Honor briefing for their smart products, the wearables, and they released earbuds, which look exactly like Huawei's FreeBuds. They released a watch, looks exactly like the Huawei Watch GT2. and they are releasing a new laptop, the Magic, whatever it's called. Now that's a little bit different because it's using AMD processors instead of Intel. So, at least from that perspective, it's a little different. But the AirPods or the earbuds and the watch, they're just a rehashed version of what Huawei is already offering by Honor. So yeah, I think it's just not restricted to smartphones. We'll have 20 different variants of the smartwatch, of the earpods, of whatever else comes out next.
I miss the days where we had like key players. So back when we had Samsung, Apple, LG, HTC, and like Xiaomi, let's include Xiaomi, and then Vivo. And I think those were like the core brands that I think everyone can sort of recognize whenever or wherever they go. And now Vivo has like 8 different branches and Xiaomi has like 6 different branches. And it's just become, and LG and HTC are not even in the picture anymore. It's just become really crazy. But I guess from the producer perspective, it's a way for them to, provide consumers with choice, with fake choice, you could say. So like consumers think we've got so many choices, but at the end of the day, like their money is going to one entity, or the product they're buying is basically a copy of another product that they might not know about. So
absolutely,
I think that's how the market will roll. And that's why people are looking forward to, big launches more so. Like this little launches, I get that they're focused on certain markets, and certain markets are like really into these launches. But the general market, the USA, the UK market, etc., I think they just care about Samsung and Apple and probably OnePlus, which is Vivo at the end of the day, or Oppo. I don't know. It's one of them at the end of the day. So
well, Oppo and Vivo are owned by the same conglomerate, so they own all three: OnePlus, Oppo, and Vivo. So it is what it is.
It's getting out of hand.
No, I agree. It was kind of like initially you were an IT expert, and then suddenly that kind of got divided into you've got, well, okay, let's take it from a hardware perspective. You had like laptops, you had digital cameras, you had smartphones, you had wearables, you had audio gear, and then suddenly tablets, and then suddenly you needed a specific person for each one of those categories because there were too many products to cover and one person couldn't do that. And now what's happening is within the smartphone segment, I think we're kind of seeing where you've got this massive tree that grows across all these different variants where I might be specializing in, let's say, Xiaomi, and you might be specializing in Oppo, and somebody else might be specializing in whatever else.
It's funny to see. That's all I'll say. It's really funny, and if I don't know, they might have a strategy to it, but I really doubt it.
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm sure the influencers will be happy. More ding 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 for them. So sorry, low blow there. All right, let's move on to the next topic.
Yes, so let's shift our focus to more of laptops. So the Surface Book 3 and the Surface Go 2. Surface is more of your category, but I haven't used it as much. So I think the Surface Book 3 has quadro graphics. That's one thing I was interested in. So it's basically aimed for video editing, high intensive performance. And you can also detach it, I think.
Yes, so Surface Book, absolutely. So, I mean, we got 2 very good laptop upgrades. So we've got Surface and MacBook Pro. Both of them got upgraded this last week. So let's kind of just bundle them together and talk about them. I was very excited to see what Microsoft has in store for the Surface Book 3. And honestly speaking, I was disappointed when I actually saw what they did reveal. I have the Surface Book 2 myself, and the one I have, it's a 13-inch, it's a Core i7, 16 gigs, 512 gigs SSD. It's got the GTX 1050, if I remember correctly. So it's a slightly older processor from that perspective. But you know what? It's not a laptop that I use for gaming. And as far as video encoding is concerned, Adobe, you've got the CUDA cores on there, which Adobe has built-in support for in Premiere. So I don't think you're going to see a massive improvement in GPU performance. Yes, on the Quadro, yes, for sure. If you're doing rendering and stuff like that, 100% on that level. But on the 13-inch, at least that's what I have, there's absolutely no design change. It looks exactly the same as the previous version, which is now well, I mean, it's a third generation, but doesn't mean it's 3 years. I feel that it's older than 3 years because they don't do necessarily one every year by the clock kind of stuff. So, there isn't any, okay, so there isn't anything in there that will make me upgrade to this, at the end of the day. I think it's just a very minor upgrade, unfortunately. Now, Surface Go, the cheaper version of it, I think that's seen, Surface Go 2. So that's seen a much larger improvement on it. I reviewed the original Surface Go. I liked it. It was a nice little computer, but very restrictive in the sense that it was super slow for what it was. The screen was tiny. I guess the screen is supposed to be tiny, but it felt very restricted. So now on that, they are offering better processors. I think the Core M3 is on the higher end. It still starts on the Pentium Gold version of it, which again, it's a very metered processor. I don't think anybody should buy that. But there is a Core M3 version of it with screen sizes. The screen size has been increased slightly by slimming down the bezels. So, your old keyboard and everything else will work fine on it without a problem. I think that is a much better upgrade.
Also has pen support, right?
Yes, all of them have pen support. So I think all of Microsoft Surface lineup have pen support on there. I think that to me is a much more interesting upgrade than the Surface Book 3. MacBook Pro 13, again, not the kind of upgrade that I was hoping. Yeah, absolutely. It's not the same upgrade that the 16-inch MacBook got, where they slimmed down the bezels, increased the screen size. You didn't get any of that. You did get the latest generation of processors, the 10th generation of processors on the higher end models. On the starting base level, you're still using the 8th gen processors.
Yeah. Oh, 8th, yes.
8th gen, yeah, absolutely. The keyboard is replaced, so they've got the newer keyboard now. So goodbye, the butterfly mechanism. All of them are dead now. Everything switched now to the newer scissor mechanism. Newer means I don't know why you want to call that newer, but it has a nicer keyboard.
We can call it legacy.
There you go. Legacy is a good word for it. But other than that, not much improvements. Better processor, better keyboard. I think that's pretty much about it. You don't have the speaker upgrades that you got on the MacBook Pro 16. You don't have any dedicated GPU, so it's still using Intel integrated on the 13-inch. And again, the screen size is exactly the same as well. 720p camera, our mobile phones are giving us 40 megapixel cameras, but hey, the MacBook loves sticking to the 720p camera. Don't know what the deal is over there, but yeah, fairly minor upgrade, I think, on both the ends.
I really wasn't expecting a 14-inch display, but I was really expecting maybe sort of dedicated GPU option on the 13-inch, and we didn't get that. So I guess that's how they differentiate, or they're going to wait until the 14-inch is ready. As you said, I think with the, what is it called? Mini LED display.
Yeah, micro LED, mini LED.
Micro. Yeah, I'm sure there's another wave of MacBooks coming sometime in October, and maybe we'll see that in October.
So rumors are that they've gotten delayed to 2021.
Okay.
That's what I read. I think was it yesterday or day before yesterday, that we're not going to get to see them. Yes, you're right. Initially, they were supposed to come in by the end of the year. But I think because the whole supply chain's just been gone completely out of whack, I think they've been delayed to 2020 as well. The iPhones as well, I think Pastor mentioned that instead of September, it might be October this year. They might have the announcement in September like they do every year, but instead of releasing them 2 weeks after the announcement, they might release them 1 month after the announcement. So
something similar to like what they did with the 10, I think, right? Because they released the 8 and the 8 Plus. Yes. And then the 10 was in November. So
exactly. Absolutely. So something similar to that. So I guess we'll just wait on to see with that.
Yeah. So laptops, pretty underwhelming. Phones, really confusing.
Yep.
Speaking of phones again, so we had the OnePlus 8 debate last time, but I've also got the Mi 10 now.
Okay.
So between these phones, which green color do you like?
OnePlus.
Why is that?
The matte finish versus the glossy finish.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking too. So when I got this phone has 865, high-end, 108 megapixel camera. It's got pretty much everything you'd expect from a flagship. It's got MIUI, which might be a drawback compared to the OnePlus. And specifically in India, they're selling at similar price tags. So this is at 50,000 rupees, and this is around the 49, I think. Or I think it's the same, right?
I guess. I haven't looked at the Xiaomi, so no idea.
Yeah, it's 865. It's basically the same spec as the OnePlus. If you were given a choice, would you buy a Xiaomi phone or would you buy a OnePlus phone?
I
That's the
prefer the
question I want to
OnePlus
ask.
brand. I mean, yeah, I prefer the OnePlus brand, definitely.
Okay. Would
Just
your
because
choice depend on OnePlus's software primarily, or would it depend on other factors?
100% on the software, 100% on the software.
Okay.
The cleaner Android experience is definitely quite nice. And not just the cleaner Android experience, but also their software updates. They're pretty good with software updates.
Right.
Between the last time that we spoke and today, I've already seen 2 updates on there. So that's a pretty good improvement. You know, we've seen 2 updates on there. And in fact, you know how I was saying where I had the issue with registering false touches. So they've kind of, you know, pretty much taken care of most of that. I still get a few of them, but not as much as when I first got the phone. So,
Okay.
you know, I like OnePlus's software development. It's fast, it's quick, you know, they're constantly on it. And obviously it's clean. So from that perspective, I definitely prefer the OnePlus over the Xiaomi.
So this is Xiaomi's like return to the flagship market. Do you think it's going to be successful given the fact that OnePlus is already out there? Or how do you think Xiaomi could price or put their product
Why?
out there?
Okay, why do you say return? Because I did test the Xiaomi 9, was it the 9 Pro or 9? I'm not sure, one of those. And that was a flagship phone by all means. At that time, I think it had a 64 megapixel sensor from last year. It had the
But did it
Snapdragon
have a flagship
855.
processor?
Yes, it did. It did. It did. In
Really?
fact, I have, yeah,
Because
I think 100%.
interesting. Then I
Yeah.
probably I haven't even heard of the phone then. Because I thought
Okay,
the
no,
Mi 10
uh,
was the
yep.
flagship return.
So the Mi 9 is the one that I'm talking about. I probably have it
Okay.
sitting upstairs in a drawer. I can bring it out. But yeah, it was a flagship phone with an 855 processor, a 64 megapixel camera, which was, you know, high end for last year. So they did have all of that on there. But you've tested both of them. You've got the OnePlus and you've got the Mi 10. What are your thoughts? Which one do you prefer? You know, what are your thoughts on these?
I think in terms of hardware, OnePlus has just done something this year where it just feels like a good phone, and it's really hard to ignore that. Because as you said, the matte finish. Now, even if I pick up the S20 Ultra without my skin,
Yep.
it kind of doesn't feel premium, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
Because I feel like the matte finish on glass is the best feel in hand. And I can say that for the P40 Pro as well, because it has the matte finish also.
Yep.
But I just don't think this is a nice finish for a flagship. I mean,
Okay.
the iPhone has it. iPhone has a matte finish as well now. So
yep, it has a matte finish on there.
So that's just a very brief like put off. Like as soon as you pick it up, it kind of feels cheap.
And
And
fingerprint
like
magnet, I can already see like tons of fingerprints on the back.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
as soon as you touch
Yep.
it. So software-wise, I haven't been that much that picky when it comes to software because I've learned to adapt to all of them at my own pace. So when I first got MIUI, yes, it was annoying, but once I started using more phones with MIUI, it was kind of okay. And one thing I don't like about OnePlus is that, you know, other smartphone manufacturers' softwares have things like, you know, an inbuilt video editor, and that's something the OnePlus doesn't have. So for example, if I want to quickly crop some footage or slow it down, or, you know, just do some basic edits to the footage, I can do that in the app, in the gallery app on pretty much every other phone except for the OnePlus. So that's where the software kind of falls short. But as I said, like overall, the OnePlus software is going to be the primary choice, like you said, to make a purchasing decision. Now, the 108 megapixel camera is interesting because I think it's the same sensor as the one found on the S20 Ultra. I think Samsung supplied it to them. So I don't know how the performance of this thing's going to be. I haven't tested it out yet. But if it's anything to go by what Samsung's done, then it's not going to be that good. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be some improvements to it. I mean, they were hyping it as having the biggest sort of sensor size for a camera smartphone. But that was wrong because the P40
Bigger than the
Pro has the
P40.
big.
Yeah.
No, it's not big. So they were just false advertising their products.
Okay.
And they got caught out for that when they released it. And there's a huge debate online, etc., etc. I think what they're doing once again with this phone is aiming at India, because I think every single manufacturer now wants to aim at India. And I don't know, I get why, but considering OnePlus did it a couple of years ago, is there scope to break that? I don't really know. OnePlus is basically like the Apple of the Android world. Like, if you want to, go against that, I don't think you'd make valid claims to go against it. I mean, they would probably beat a Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus or Ultra with the OnePlus 8 Pro, like side by side, if anyone was to choose. So Samsung was the king. Now it's OnePlus and Apple.
Makes sense. I mean, I don't know if you're right about OnePlus sort of being like the Apple, but again, I don't necessarily know if I'll agree with you on that, because I think Samsung is still a pretty big name. In the Android space, a lot of people still associate Android with Samsung, but then, OnePlus has got that clean.
Like I was going through a roundup of all the best devices you can buy at a certain budget, like just 2 or 3 days back. And from the $400 mark all the way up to $1,000 mark, the only phones that were mentioned were either OnePlus or Apple. Okay. So they've basically got the entire market covered.
See, okay, I think there are, okay, so I mean, let's split this into two things, yeah? I mean, you and I are like tech geeks. We know our stuff. We know the specifications. We know the brands. So for us, it is very easy to see how OnePlus is such a good phone. But for the average person, and I'm just talking about the UAE, maybe things are different in other countries, India or US or wherever else. But here in the UAE, OnePlus doesn't have a big name, right? I mean, they need to sort of build that branding for themselves. Not only that, but if something happens with your phone, if your phone cracks, breaks, etc., if you have a Samsung or a Huawei or an Apple, you know where to go. You know exactly where to go, where to take that phone, where to get that fixed. Whereas at least in the region, at least in the UAE, here OnePlus doesn't have that at the moment. So that kind of makes me put it a step below the other brands that I mentioned, purely because of that. Again, not from a hardware perspective, not from a performance perspective, not from a software perspective, because you're right. OnePlus nails all of those. So that is where OnePlus loses points, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, because I tend to have that view of, because we get the phones and I rarely break phones and damage phones. So I don't really think about that, but that's a valid point. You have to think of the overall, and maybe the OnePlus does lose out. But maybe in a couple of years or a year. Because it's surprising, because normal consumers might not know about OnePlus, but all of the friends that I talk to, like even if they aren't into phones, like they come up to me and they're like, which one should I get? I want an Android phone. My choice is between the OnePlus and the Samsung. So yes, from an overall support perspective, and like if you break your phone, etc., Samsung is the best, especially in this region. They have a very dominant foothold in this region.
Ecosystem, absolutely.
But if I'm talking about like performance and like how nice it is in terms of software, how fast it is, fluidity, etc., more of the points go to the OnePlus. So the OnePlus becomes my recommendation only on the fact that it's a great phone by itself, but it might not have like that company backing in this region, and that's why maybe it falls short. But over time, people are starting to recognize OnePlus as a brand, and it's been surprising. This last 2 weeks, especially, like there's been 3 or 4 messages I got where people ask me if I should buy a OnePlus phone, and they're all based in the UAE. So,
no, I wish them all the success. They're a fantastic phone brand, and I think again,
maybe they can capture the UAE market without even trying.
Yeah, we need a little bit of Carl Pay's attention for that, and I don't think we're getting that soon.
You can call him up.
All right. So, so here's the first disadvantage. I can see the camera flashing low battery right now in front of me, which means that this obviously doesn't allow us to record longer shows, but we are probably close to that. Okay, all right. So let's wrap the show before it just suddenly, gets completely wiped out without any explanation whatsoever. The next apocalypse has just happened or whatever. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So Baba, where can people reach? Yeah.
On my YouTube channel, on Twitter, or on Instagram. That's where I'm most active.
Stuff. Instagram is your preferred platform.
Yep.
Okay,
you can
excellent.
send me a message if you want to know anything more. And yeah, that's about it.
Our handles are displayed on the screen so people can get in touch with you. But I did want to ask you if you can explain that, because it's a very, very, very weird handle. Let's save that discussion for next week. I'd kind of like to know what's behind that story.
No one knows it. No one knows it.
Okay, so we'll find out next week.
No, we won't, because it'll stay secret forever.
I'll get it out of you next week. Don't worry. I'll just throw questions at you, and you can just nod like this or like that. You don't have to tell us. Just nod.
If you get it out of me, I'd be impressed. Let's just say that.
All right. Challenge accepted. Cool. Well, thank you very much for watching this episode. Please do leave any comments if you have any in the section. And no, I want to be your friend does not count as a comment. I don't know why we're getting spammed with such comments. These actually relevant comments would be very helpful.
That bot is around YouTube, like on every single video.
It's hilarious. It's quite funny. But yeah, that's our show for it. See you guys next week. Bye-bye. Hello and welcome to episode 3, which is being recorded by the third time. Thank you very much. I don't know if I should blame Etisalat, Zoom, or whoever else is sort of messing around with our internet connections, because we've cut off a couple of times trying to record this. But here we are, episode 3, bit by bit. I can't even remember what we started with the first couple of times.
I think the fact that we got lesser views on the second episode than we did on the first one.
That's correct. Our viewership dropped by almost 50%, which is not cool with the internet. Come on, guys, you need to fix yourself. Come on, listen to us. We're a fantastic tool here. Just lovely voices, excellent tag, very, very timely about it too. And we do it by clockwork. If it's not every Tuesday, then every Wednesday. And if it's not every Wednesday, it's every Thursday. Like clockwork, it always works. Anyways, let's start with episode 3 one more time. We have quite a few things that we wanted to speak with you about. Starting with the OnePlus 8. We spoke about it after the launch, and neither one of us had the devices at that time. Now we do. Let's show our devices. So I've got this sexy blue color. Come on, is there a poll that we can come over here? Let's put a poll. Let's put a poll on YouTube. Which
this one's gonna win.
Blue. I mean, look at that shiny little thing. Ooh, it's quite nice. Right. Okay. So you've had the device for a few days. I've been using mine for about 3 days now as well. Tell me if your opinion has changed since we first spoke about the device without really having it, and now that you have it, what do you think of it?
I think the opinion is kind of the same. It might have changed a bit in favor of OnePlus, but aside from that bit of change, it's kind of the same. I was expecting pretty much a similar device to the Oppo Find X2 Pro. And switching from that to the OnePlus 8 Pro, it's felt very natural because I think the size is almost the same. One thing I would say is they've done an excellent job with the weight distribution. So even though it's a 6.78 inch display, it still doesn't feel that big. And I think that's something incredible. And at 200 grams or 199 grams, it's lighter than every single other flagship that was released this year, I'm pretty sure, because most of these touched 205 grams this year. So in terms of it being nice to hold in the hand, great color, something I can't say about many other flagships this year again. Software experience has been top notch because it's OnePlus, you can't really complain. Now, the thing I did focus on was the camera. I thought the front-facing camera, the 16 megapixel, that's not a pop-up anymore. I thought that would be sort of a sacrifice, but it hasn't turned out to be that much of a sacrifice. I compared it extensively with the 7 Pro and the 7T Pro, and this one has better detail in pictures, and it takes better pictures overall. My face looks brighter,